Morning. Happy Tuesday. So this is your flex day. Sorry, I'm trying to get this in the right spot. This is your Tuesday assignment of listening to me talk about the notes and then doing your Go Formative homework. So pretty standard. It's just you're doing it from home today. Couple things to note. Yes, we weren't here yesterday, so I could give you this packet. Well, we were planning on being here today, actually, so it got kind of messy. So you don't have this packet, but for now you can find it in your OneNote. And I also linked just a blank copy into the page that you are finding this video. So just check below and you can print that, or you can just do it on a separate sheet of paper for today and then transfer it to your packet. Just find some method so that you have this stuff written down, okay? So, because you will be responsible for the homework for tomorrow, all right? So this is day one of our next unit. This next unit is all about polynomials. So let's just talk about that really quick because that's a good intro. The prefix poly just means many, okay? And then the word nomial just means terms, term or terms. So literally what polynomial means is it is an equation or an expression that has many terms. So we're going to talk about what a term means. You might have talked about that in middle school. I'm not sure. But we're going to talk about that, and we're going to pretty much just like order these things today and name them. Okay, so we're not doing much math today. That'll be later on in the unit, but we are going to talk about like putting it in the correct order, putting it in standard form, and all of that. Okay, so before we need to talk about all of that is just like what is a term. So term is something that is separated by addition or subtraction. That is the key. All right. So we're going to look at all of these down here. We're going to make some examples as well for this. So right here, I'm going to circle all of the different terms. So x squared is separate from 4x, which is separate from 5. See how they all have plus or minus, but these are all plus. See how there's an addition sign in the middle? Each of those are a different term. So there are 3 terms in this because there are 3 different things being separated by a plus sign. Okay? Another term, for an example, would be 5x. That is one term. They are not separate because there is no plus or minus sign in there. Okay? So I'm putting that one there so you know that that is literally just one term. They are not separate. Okay? And then we can just get creative. You're going to see stuff like this unit, plus 5x to the third, plus 7x, plus 8. So obviously totally random, but look at how many terms there are. If you need, go here and look at how many plus signs there are, and each of those things that are being separated by those, that's how many terms you have. So 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, okay? Good with just, hopefully you're good with just like knowing what a term is. Now we're going to classify. And by doing this, we just have to look at the number of terms. And then we also have to look at this thing called degree, okay? So this first one is actually, we are going to talk about the number of terms, okay? So you're looking for plus signs and how many things are being separated. So if you're going through, all of these have something in common, okay? There's only one plus or minus, but how many terms are there? There are 2. So 5x plus 2. 5x is a term, 2 is a term. The next one, 6x to the 4th, is separate from 3x squared. Those are 2 different terms. So what these are called are binomials. Make sure you spell these correctly because you will get it counted wrong if you do not spell it correctly. And binomial means there are 2 different terms. So there's only one plus or minus sign, and there's 2 different terms in each of those. The next one, we can kind of do the same thing. Notice how many different separators there are. So how many terms there would be. For this first one, 2x cubed, 6x, and 7 are all 3 different terms. So these are all 3 terms, and these are called trinomials. You can kind of see why. I mean, a bi is like a bicycle, tricycle. So this is a trinomial because they all have 3 terms. Okay? Next one, notice there's no plus or minus. So how many terms, ask yourself, how many terms are there for each of these? And remember, this is one term. okay? They are not separate. There's no plus or minus. So how many terms? There's only one term for all three of the, or for four of these examples. So what is this called? A monomial. Make sure you spell these correctly again, okay? That's an N, not an H. Okay, so mono means one because they all have one term. It's just a singular thing, okay? So all three of these are our three ways of classifying by the number of terms. So I'm going to ask you to look at a polynomial and say, classify this polynomial based on number of terms. This is what we're looking at, binomial, trinomial, or monomial. Okay, 2, 3, or 1. Next part, we're going to do degree. That's a new word, okay? But a degree is just the exponent, but it's the largest exponent in the expression, okay? So we're going to look at these. We're going to start small, and then we're going to get bigger as we flip over, but we're looking at all of these. So you want to look at an exponent. So you have to locate the variable in this expression, okay? So 8x minus 5. The exponent is technically right here, write this in, is a 1 because there's x to the first. The x is still there, so it's not 0, it's 1. Z has a 1. The B has a 1. The K has a 1. Okay? So this, if we're classifying it by the degree, we're looking at those ones. That is the highest degree here, okay? So what this is called is linear. All right, so this is our first way of classifying by degree because the largest exponent on a variable, and we already talked about that, you have to locate the variable, is 1. You don't see an x squared, you don't see an x cubed. It is just x, z, b, or k. They all have 1s. So that is a linear, okay? So now what you want to talk about is we can do both. Like the first one would be linear, but it would also be a binomial because we have 2 terms, okay? So let's kind of start seeing that. So flip it over. We're going to go through the next couple. All right. We're looking at degree here. So we're looking at exponents. So locate all of your exponents. Circle them. That's the highest. The d squared is the highest. It's not the p to the first. That's smaller than the squared, the 2. And then also here is the 2. So that's our highest exponent. These are called good old quadratics. I said that weird, but they're called quadratics. Okay, we will actually have an entire unit on these things later on. And the reason they're called quadratics is because the largest exponent is 2. So I searched through all of those and I found a 2 in all of them. That is the highest for them. So these are called, that's a quadratic if it's 2. The next one, circle your highest. So looking through that first one, we find a 3. I don't care about this, that's a 1. That's not the highest one, okay? H3, 2, 1, and 3. It's at the back, but that is the highest. C2 and C3. Highest degree is 3 for all of these, okay? So what is that called if we have a highest degree of 3 on a variable? That is called a cubic. Okay? So it's because cubic is technically like that volume is like a 3rd degree dimension. It's weird, but so that is a cubic for a highest degree of 3. This last one is weird. It is, what do the following polynomials have in common? Are there any variables? The answer is no. So if there's no variable here, that exponent, that largest exponent on that variable that's not there is 0. Okay, so it's technically, you don't have to write this, but it's technically the fact that we have an x to the 0, which is just, we've talked about this in the past, which is just 1. Okay, so since there's no variable, the exponent on that variable is 0, and this is called constant. And it's because those are all just constant numbers, okay? So that is what those are called. Cool? So just to kind of talk about all of this, all of those, the 4 we just did, are classifying by, this is the word I've been throwing at you, degree. which is the polynomial's largest exponent, and we've talked about that. You search in the polynomial for the largest exponent, and that is your degree. So we have quadratic, which is 2, cubic, which is 3, and constant, which is 0. But we also have, we can't forget about the one on the last page, we have linear, which is 1. Okay, so if you just have x, z, b, and there's no number on that. Okay? So let's just do both. We're putting them all together. So I'm going to do the first one, and then I'll kind of give you time to work on the next two. I'm going to ask you this. Name each by the degree and number of terms. So the degree is the exponent, okay? So you have to search your polynomial. The highest exponent in here is 2. So maybe even jot that down in parentheses. That is my highest exponent of 2. So you look back at your list, and which one is it in a highest exponent of 2? It's your quadratic, okay? So this one right here is a quadratic. Make sure you spell it correctly. Number of terms. This is where, that's the first thing we did. We look at how many terms are there. So if you need to do this and see how many separators do we have. So each of those that is between the separators are a term. So I have the 5x squared, the 4x, and the negative 8, or the 8. That is a 3 term, okay? So you can even put that in parentheses so you know. And it's called a trinomial. Don't be afraid to use your notes. You don't have to memorize these right away, okay? Next one, the degree. Pause, try to figure it out. I'm going to go write it in. 9x technically has a 1. So my degree is technically 1 here, okay? Hopefully you got that right. If not, just go back and try it again. Or here's why. The x doesn't have an exponent, but it does have a 1. So the degree of 1, the highest degree of 1, is called linear. How many terms? 9x, it's not 2. Those are stuck together. So the number of terms here is 1, and that's called a monomial. Again, look back on the notes from the first side. And last one, pause, try to figure it out. You should have found that the highest degree there, it's not the 2, it's the 3. So my degree is 3, but we have to be specific, and that is a cubic, looking at the list from above. Number of terms, right here, there are 2. So what's that called? A binomial. Okay? Be careful with spelling, of course. All right, so now we're on our last step. Okay, you've learned how to name things, you've learned how to classify them as for the number of terms and the degree. Now I'm going to talk about the correct order for these, and you can actually miss some good points if you forget how to order correctly, okay? So to put a thing in standard form, it's going to be super important. There's just a specific order, and it's about the exponents. So you have to label from greatest exponent to the smallest exponent. And you must combine like terms. So you have to simplify these things, and then you have to order them in the correct way, okay? So like terms in this unit have the same variable and exponent, okay? So that's what you're looking for things that pretty much look the same, but they have different coefficients. And remember, a coefficient is just the number out in front. So I'm going to take you through how to do that, but in the later ones. But let's just talk about the order on that first one. So the first one, remember, we have to have greatest to smallest exponent, okay? Or largest to smallest. I've used weird words. But so look at these. Just like what we did before, locate the highest one for the degree, because we're going to need to name it. That is the one that has to go in front. And when you do these, the negative 2x cubed, the negative has to go with it. The 5x squared is technically positive. So when I reorder this in standard form, negative 2x to the third goes out in front, plus 5x squared, and now I am correctly in standard form. See how the sign goes with whatever it is in front of, okay? Cool? So now we can do the same thing, which we already did up top, but name it. So degree here is our good old 3, because that's the highest one. So remember, that's a cubic. Number of terms. You should start being able to see this pretty quickly, but there are two because there's only one plus sign in the middle of them. So that is called a binomial. All right. Next part is putting it in standard, but we do have to combine like terms first. Okay, so here's how I do it. You can kind of do them together, okay? So I want you to figure out what is the highest exponent, which is the one that needs to go out in front. It's this one. So go ahead and just write that. 7z squared is going to be the very first one, okay? And you have to kind of search the problem. Are there any other z squareds that need to be added to it? There are not, okay? Now we have to focus on combining like terms. The next one would technically be the z's because it goes z2, z1, and then no z's. So these two are like terms. This is why I had you do this on the e-learning yesterday. You have to add those together or subtract or whatever sign, but 4z is positive and so is the plus 3z. So you add them together, that would be plus 7z. Notice how the exponent does not change. You just add those numbers in front together, okay? And then the other guy is minus 5, but that doesn't have anything similar to it, so it's just minus 5 at the back. Look at my order. Z2, Z1 technically has a 1 here, and then no Z's. That is the correct order for standard form. And I combine like terms, and we are in standard. Then we do degree. Hopefully you can do this, so pause it if you can. Highest degree is 2. That's called a quadratic. Number of terms, you should have gotten already, hopefully, is a trinomial. Okay, there are 3 terms there. See how you could have gotten that wrong if you didn't combine like terms? Because the original one had 4, but you have to combine like terms, okay? Last one, I'll pause and give you a sec. Hopefully you can figure it out. I'm going to go through this and just show you which ones are like terms first. So 8p to the third and negative 8p to the third. Those are like terms. Negative 3p and positive 3p are like terms. And then 7 is its own like term. So go through those. Hopefully you got this, but this one's kind of weird. 8p and negative 8p actually cancel out. Because 8 minus 8 is 0. Negative 3p and positive 3p also cancel out because that's 0. So what are we left with for this one? Just 7. Okay, that's my standard form answer. Because I combined all of my like terms, they actually disappeared and I'm just left with 7. What's my degree on this one? There are no variables, so it's that weird one. The degree is technically 0. There's no variables. So this is called your constant. And how many terms, hopefully you can get this one by now, is a monomial. Okay? So that's a lot at you, but it's really just looking at that list and correctly classifying them. And the order just takes practice. Highest exponent down to nothing. Okay, so the 5 was at the back here because there was nothing there. Okay, there was no z. Z2, Z1, nothing. Okay, Z3, Z2, or X3, X2. Okay. So give that Go Formative a go, and I will see you on Wednesday.